Hey, Credit Warriors, welcome to the show, and we are going to talk about the shocking revelation that Tim Cook himself, the CEO of Apple, was actually denied for the Apple Card, according to people with knowledge of the situation. And consider this video a little bit of an update and a sequel to my earlier video about the possible end of the Apple Card, because we have some new information, actually, from this really big article in a publication called The Information that was quoted in 9 to 5 Mac, okay? How the partnership between Apple and Goldman Sachs soured. And we're going to go through some of the key points in this article because it talks about not only how Tim Cook was denied for the Apple Card, but then also a bit about how the relationship has changed and how Goldman is trying to get out of the partnership with Apple and just how bad their deal is. You're going to be shocked when you hear what a crappy contract that Goldman Sachs actually has with Apple. Okay, so there we go. There's Tim Cook. We'll get into how he was denied for the Apple Card sort of at the end. But let's first talk about basically how Goldman Sachs is kind of stuck in this this partnership with Apple. Okay, so when the Apple Card launched, it was hailed as the most successful credit card launched ever, okay, by Goldman Sachs' CEO David Solomon. And less than 4 years later, basically after just a few months after they'd actually extended their partnership through the end of the decade, then all of a sudden Goldman Sachs decides that it wants to get out. Okay, they want to get out of consumer lending. All right, they're shutting down some of their other credit cards. They only have like 2 or 3. The only thing they're keeping is their Marcus savings accounts. They're basically shutting down their consumer side. They don't want that anymore, and they're really trying to get out of the Apple partnership. Now, like we said in the earlier video, American Express had been approached about it, apparently, again, according to people with knowledge of the situation, and it's basically hard for Goldman to get out of it without Apple's approval. They also have a partnership with MasterCard that's running until 2026. You can see that there, okay? So if they were to switch to American Express, they would have to be over the Amex network, but actually they've got this deal with MasterCard until 2026. So, it could be very hard. Basically, it's looking really hard for Goldman to get out of it. And also Amex may be too high profile of a partner anyway for Apple, because Apple kind of wants to have its name as the sort of the star of this card. I was thinking, it would be funny if they partnered with Synchrony Bank, okay? Because Synchrony, if you don't know, that's the bank that issues a lot of the sort of co-branded cards that a lot of people complain their customer service isn't very good. But anyway, kind of an inside credit card joke. But anyway, I want to tell you, I want to kind of scroll down through this article and show you just how bad the contract is between Goldman Sachs and Apple, because this article gives some details, again, from people with knowledge of the situation. So, all right, Apple Card had 10 million users, apparently, which, hasn't previously been reported, but that's pretty successful. And the deal between Goldman Sachs and Apple is actually pretty bad for Goldman. Okay, it's a pretty good deal for Apple, perhaps, but it's pretty bad for Goldman. As part of the deal, Goldman doesn't take a cut of the interchange fee that merchants pay to accept Apple Card, cutting out a potential line of revenue, according to 2 people with direct knowledge. In exchange, Apple pays for the daily cash rewards, and the exception was that the costs and revenue would essentially even out, and that hasn't borne out. Okay, so basically, if you don't know, credit cards, they charge interchange fees to the merchant. So whenever you swipe your card, there's kind of a hidden like 2% fee or whatever that's paid by the merchant. And that's another reason you should always use a credit card for everything, because basically everything's marked up by a couple of percent. All right, never use cash, never use a debit card. You might as well use the credit card and get the rewards, because you're paying like an extra 2% anyway that's built into the price of everything because of credit cards. So normally the issuing bank would take a cut of that. In this case, Goldman doesn't get anything. Apple, though, pays for the rewards. So that's supposed to even out, but there's then another crucial detail here. And that's that Apple's card has no fees. All right. So there's no, here we go. Because Apple Card doesn't have fees, Goldman also misses out on potential sources of revenue from customers who would typically pay annual fees, late fees, or fees for overseas transaction. Okay, so Goldman's not getting any of that. What are they actually getting from this? Okay. However, Goldman earns a fee from Apple in the high single-digit percentage of every loan issued to cardholders who opt to split the cost of Apple products over monthly installments, okay, according to people with knowledge of the situation again. So basically, the only profit Goldman is making from this is for people who use Apple Card to finance Apple product. That's actually a shocking detail. And one of these analysts that was interviewed for this article, it goes on to say, no commercial bank that's experienced in the credit card business is going to give Apple the same terms as Goldman did, okay? Which I think is kind of crazy. Obviously, Goldman only did this because it's Apple. They were probably thinking Apple could raise their profile in the consumer lending business. And I mean, at the time, actually probably did make sense because Apple is such a high-profile brand, and everyone knew Goldman Sachs was issuing the Apple Card, all right? It's written on the card, Goldman Sachs. So it really did raise their profile. And if they wanted to springboard into the consumer lending index, consumer lending business, it probably would have made sense. But obviously it hasn't worked out financially for them. And they've since decided that they actually don't even want to be in this business anyway. So even using it as a springboard to launch other cards isn't being done now. So just having the Apple Card on its own, losing money on it doesn't really make sense for them. All right, let's now look at why Tim Cook was actually denied for the Apple Card. And, this is kind of interesting. So here it is. Basically, the Apple chief executive, he struggled to get approved for his own card. And it says here, the problem stemmed from the fact that he's such a high-profile figure and he's regularly impersonated. And people of this stature typically have special flags on their accounts with the credit bureaus. Now, I didn't know this, but yeah, apparently the credit bureaus are flagging these people accounts like billionaires, multimillionaires, people who are frequently impersonated or have fraud attempts in their name. And Goldman's underwriting system rejected him as a result, according to 4 people. So we can say it's pretty reliable, according to 4 people familiar with the matter. And Goldman actually eventually was able to make a one-off exception, and Cook got his card. So they actually apparently manually approved him for this in a one-off exception. So what this proves is that actually it might be a little difficult for people who are high profile to get this card. And this isn't the only hiccup that the card experienced. I think if you remember back when the card was first launched, there were a few other hiccups as well, including the Apple Card actually being sexist. So this is kind of funny. Steve Wozniak, he says that the Apple Card offered his wife a lower credit limit than him. And there was this whole big thing about the Apple Card being sexist. At the time, after this news came out, me and my wife did a test and we discovered that it gave us exactly the same credit limit. So in our test, it was not sexist. The engineers may have already done a patch for that. I don't know by that time. But anyway, that was just one of the hiccups. And then the other one, which just came out in this article about a week ago or 2 weeks ago, was Tim Cook himself, not being able to be approved for the card. So we'll see what happens, guys. We'll keep an eye on this story. Apple Card or anything to do with Apple is always interesting. So we'll keep you updated. Thanks again for watching. Also, if you want to get 12 free stocks from Webull, you can check out the link below. And that's for depositing any amount of money. Minimum amount is 6. And if you're lucky, you can get up to 12. Minimum value for this is $34 if you just get 6 stocks. If you get up to 12 and you get the highest values possible, could be several $1,000s. Luck of the draw, what you get. Link for that is below. Big thank you to Webull for sponsoring the channel. Please subscribe. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.